morning. We were asked to talk about YFN, so I'm very excited. If you're part of Zap and you went to TOV or YFN, could you stand up? Zappers or leaders? So we have a handful all around the room. If you were impacted by God, keep standing. If you were impacted in any way by God. So here's what's awesome. There are people around you. For people who are not familiar, if you're not familiar with any of the ones standing up and you want to get to know them, this is a perfect way. So if they've been impacted by God, then make sure you ask them how. So anyway, thank you. I don't know if Drew Schofield's here, but she is. Oh, is she? So several of our kids were impacted in a lot of different ways, and it was really hard to pick between the two. But some of our kids, we have one who's a little bit shyer, and when we were doing testimonies, she is jumping up and down talking about how God set her free of fear. We have a few others who were just so touched by the heart of the Father that they were crying, like people who have had a disconnect maybe with parents or just in life, and they were so touched by God as the Father. And some of the shyer ones I couldn't bring up. Drew Schofield in particular, her heart is for prayer, and especially praying for people with apathy. And she's this cute little quiet girl, and if any of you want prayer from her, by her, whatnot, she is incredible heart after the Lord. But so we called up these two. So Gus and Aiden, first introduce yourselves. Who are you and how did you get to Zap?
Okay, my name is Aiden Hammond. I came to Zap with my friend Tori about a year and a half ago. She invited me, and I don't usually go to Southgate in the mornings. I go to Faith Church, but I really felt connected to Zap, so that's why I started coming.
Hey, my name is Augustus. I've come here ever since I was like a little dude, and I moved to. Little to me. Yeah, I'm still pretty little, but I moved to Florida about a year and a half ago, and I still come back for the summers, and I still participate in things like YFN, TOV, KOV, all that kind of stuff. But I've gone to Zap ever since I could.
Okay. So there's two big things that Zap does every year. It's Pinecrest and YFN. And if you've talked to any of the people who've done YFN before, you would know incredible things happen. The history of YFN is really Christ for the Nations, and it was founded off of Gordon Lindsay, who got saved through kind of the tent revival meetings. And so he has his heart for missions, his heart for revival, for people knowing God in a very powerful, real way. And so you guys probably, if you've talked to members, we've had proposals at YFN. We've had the calling into the ministry. We've had anniversaries and things of that nature. And YFN is fantastic because it's almost like our family vacation. And so how were you guys both impacted?
I was impacted by YFN in a huge way. I've always been a Christian, like I said, and I've always come to church, and I've had good messages from God, just like a couple words or maybe a sentence, and I felt his presence, especially at the big camps and stuff like TOV and KOV. But once I went to YFN, I felt this overwhelming, just the power and presence of God, and it was amazing. I didn't just hear a couple sentences like you usually do. You hear paragraphs and paragraphs, and he's basically preaching to you from up there. And you just feel the overwhelming presence, and you just break down into tears. And a couple years ago, I've been to a few YFNs, and I've been called to ministry before, and he kind of brought me back into that and re-invited that idea into me and called me back to that. So it really had a huge impact on me.
So go through what exactly happened this year.
What exactly happened this year? Well, I had a really big drought in terms of my faith and my relationship with God around 5 months ago. Things were going really bad. I was probably at an all-time low. in terms of like where I was with myself and like where I was with my faith and my relationship with God. And it was getting better, and because I knew it was bad, and I really missed the relationship I had with God. So I was kind of rebuilding that when I was going into the summer, but once I got back into YFN, it just nothing but up from there. And it was amazing.
So you had a moment that was extremely impactful. So go ahead and go into that a little bit.
I was pretty much just there, and the music playing in the background, all the lights and everything, and you're just there, and I just feel light, like I'm floating. And then you just are there, and you feel like goosebumps, but like it's times 10, and then times 10 again, and like you're just kind of like, what is happening? And then it's so like much that you just start sobbing, and you just start crying, and you don't know how else to express it. And then my friend Drew prayed for me, and as soon as he touched my shoulder, it just went from like, if you thought that was like the presence of God, it went like times 100 from there. And then I just sat down, and then I started hearing him say things to me like, I know you were far from home, but you're back, and I'm calling you to do ministry, and I'm calling you to do bigger things in my church. And it was just really impactful, and it was amazing.
It really is special when you have high school boys who, you want to look cool and tough, and they're just weeping because they've been touched by God. And so, everyone knew about it. He just, how did you compare that moment to teenage girls? I was like, what happened? And he's like, well, it was like this, and I just died.
Well, because I forgot to mention this part, but like afterwards, I had 2 people praying for me, and my cousin Drew, he had 2 hands on me, and my friend Caden, who went to YFN, but he doesn't go here, he had 1 hand on me. So I was asking them, like, because every night after YFN, we go back to the house, and we're like, okay, what kind of happened that night? And we were talking about, I was like, okay, so who was the 3rd person that was praying for me? Because I felt someone's hand on the back of my, like, in the middle of my back. So I asked Drew, and he said he had 2 hands here, and Caden had 1 hand here. And when we were going back over it in the hotel afterwards, we were like, oh, shoot, there wasn't a 3rd person. And then I had one of those, like, aha moments, like when a teenage girl sees, like, her favorite boy band. I was like, ah! And I was, like, rolling around on the floor, and I was pretty excited, like, kicking and stuff. So, yeah. It was cool.
Right, that's awesome. Aiden, what about you? How were you impacted?
So I came to YFN. This is my 2nd time at YFN. So the first time I was really seeking to experience the Lord, and that meant like being slain in the Spirit and things like that. But this time I came hoping that he would change some mindsets in my life so that when I went back home, things didn't have to go back to the way they were. And he did. He gave me some major mindsets that I'm still holding on to right now, and I'm going to continue holding on to, which is great. But the last night I was praying, and I was like, Lord, please, I can't, things cannot go back to the way they were. And so on the bus ride home, it was closer to the beginning, probably before lunch. I was still trying to cling and hold on to what I had at YFN. So I was like, why not open my Bible? So I start reading my Bible. I'm in the middle of the aisle, right? In the middle of the bus. So, and I'm reading, and my friends start coming around me, and we're all reading, and I'm reading, and then my friend is reading, and then we're opening it up to questions, and we're praying, things like that. And I really felt the Lord tell me, in that moment on my heart, that if you keep seeking me this way, then things will never go back to the way they were. So, yeah.
On the bus ride, on the way home, this conversation was going on for hours. I joined a group of them and maybe talked myself with them for 3 hours, but they were getting into scripture. They were having conversations. They were repeating some of the what pastors had preached, it's just this time when, Pastor Schneider was talking, and they were just talking about all kinds of deep questions and even talking about, well, how do we take this back? And you have different kids talking about, well, this faith has to be your own, not just because of YFN. And it was incredible. Is there anything anything else you want to say, anything else you want to add to the group?
Sure. I think it was last night. Sam asked me. She was like, "What do you think that? How do you think YFN or Zap is going, like the leaders, like right now, the kids in my age group, how they're going to become like leaders in the future?" And I feel like closer to our end years of high school, we're going to become like leaders of Zap. But as soon as we go out to college, we're going to be like light of that world a little bit like that. So here, this is where we can be together and like be a family, right? But when it's time to be disciples of Christ, we can go out into our colleges and our universities and be disciples of Christ there. So that's what I feel is going.
Yeah. It's just kind of like you said. YFN was great, and it's really impactful, and it sets you in the right direction, but it's kind of up to you to sustain that relationship for yourself. And it gets hard, especially when school comes running around and temptations around the corner, and it's really hard to stay up with your relationship with God, but you just got to keep that up, and you got to keep your relationship going and keep that fire from burning out.
They're 15 years old, by the way. Great, thank you.